Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. I am here today with a video for you guys on how to get into vet school. So you might be wondering why I'm qualified to even tell you this. So I'll just introduce myself. I am Hannah and I'm a fourth year vet student here at the University of Florida. And so I'm about to graduate, woo, one more year, a little less. But so I've been through the application process a couple of times and I was finally accepted into about 4 vet schools. So I know this process inside and out and I just want to share what I know with you guys. So I actually wrote a blog post about this a few years ago, which I can link down below, and it will have more details than even what I'm gonna go over. So it'll just cover all of your bases from A to Z, from beginning to end, about all of your questions of getting into vet school, because it is an extensive process. For me, from the time I decided I wanted to be a vet, which was later on in life for me, and then to the time I actually got into vet school, that was about almost a decade. And then actually completing vet school itself, which is 4 years, we're looking at a long time here. So it can be a lengthy process. I took a bit of the scenic route. It doesn't take that long for everyone, but either way is okay, whatever you're comfortable with. So I will just go ahead and get started without further ado. I apologize, I do have a little cheat sheet here because as you can see, it's front and back. I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget anything so that this is a really complete and comprehensive video for anyone that is looking to go to vet school someday. So let's go ahead and get started. So first off, I'm just gonna start with where you should start off in high school in case that's the point you're at. I will say a lot of people I talk to know that they wanted to be a vet since they were little and that's all they've ever wanted to do. And it's funny, like a lot of people in the industry have that story. So if that's the case for you, that's great. You can start doing these things at any time in your life, and the earlier you start, the better, honestly, because the more experience you're gonna have, the more you're gonna know about the industry, and it's just going to be better all around. So the sooner you find out, the better. But if you're like me and you've always loved animals, but you never thought you would want to be a vet for some reason, or it never crossed your mind and you find out later in life, that's okay too. You can start at any point in time. You'll just have to do a little bit of catch-up work, which I will go over. So if you're in high school or before, these are some of the things that you can kind of start doing and thinking about. So what I would recommend at that point in your career is taking as many science courses as possible. And the reason for this is because if you're in a program like AP or IB, you can get college credit for those courses. So that can eliminate and shave off some of those kind of general prerequisites that you would be taking your first couple of years of college. So if you can save time by doing that in high school, that's great. I personally did the IB program, but I didn't know that I wanted to be a science major, so I didn't focus my IB studies around that. And if I did, I would have saved a lot more time. So if you know you want to go into something science related or vet med, definitely try and orient your high school course schedule around those things. And it's not only about getting college credit for the courses. So another good reason to take these courses is because it can just jumpstart you in your science career. If you're learning about biology, if you are learning about marine sciences or any cool electives that they have at your high school, you are going to be ahead of the curve when you go to college. So I would highly recommend going ahead and starting with those courses. Another thing I would just tell you to start thinking about in high school, and you don't have to decide this even until you're almost at the end of vet school when you're applying for a job. So this isn't a huge thing to start, worrying about, but I would start thinking about what type of vet are you interested in being? Are you interested in treating small animals, cats and dogs? Are you interested in exotics like guinea pigs, ferrets, birds, pocket pets, things like that? Or are you interested in large animals? Or are you interested in zoo medicine and do you want to go work at a zoo? And the reason that it's good to start thinking about that is because the vet industry is such a vast industry. You have so many options when you get into this industry, which is one of the most amazing things about this industry, because you can do almost anything with your veterinary degree. But that being said, you probably would want to focus your area of study and just kind of decide what it is that you want to be really, really good at. Just because while we can do, multiple things, and that's perfectly fine if you want to do mixed or things like that, if you can kind of narrow down what you're really passionate about, then you can start gaining experience in that area. And you can start really defining what you want to do and the impact you want to make in that area. So for me, that's shelter medicine. That's the reason I wanted to go into vet med, is because I want to help community cats and do high volume spay and neuter and like low cost wellness clinics and shelter work. That's my passion. I also really enjoy wildlife rehabilitation, and the two actually overlap in many areas, surprisingly. So once you kind of like figure that out, that's going to guide where you want to gain your volunteer experience and basically the path that you're going to be on. So I would recommend just start thinking about that, but also kind of don't put yourself in a box either and say, I just want to do this. I just want to do small animal, because it's so important to branch out and to explore those other areas too, because you don't always necessarily know that what you want to do is what you want to do until you try other things. Or until, you try the thing that you want to do. So I had no idea that I would like working with wildlife. I never thought that that was something I wanted to do. It didn't even cross my mind. But once I started working at a wildlife rehabilitation facility, I ended up absolutely loving it. I loved working with wildlife. I love that excitement of kind of not knowing what you're gonna see or what's gonna come in. And I really just enjoyed helping those animals that, are wildlife. They're not anyone's pets. They are just members of the community just like us, and they need someone to care for them too. But I would have never known that if I never tried it. So I also think it's just important because there's a lot of overlap within species, and there's a lot of cross-species diseases. And while the body systems of many different animals are slightly different, they also overlap. So you're going to gain something from every single experience. You're going to take something away. Say you're a small animal person and you have no interest in large animal, you're still going to gain valuable experience from going out and volunteering with farm animals. I was an animal science major in undergrad, and we did a lot of large animal work in that major. And while that wasn't what I, was planning on doing or focusing on, I gained so much from those experiences. And as a vet, you ideally should have a baseline knowledge of all species. And in order to pass the North American Veterinary Licensing Exam, or also known as your board exam in vet school, you have to know about all species. So that being said, any volunteer experience that you do is going to benefit you in some way. It's going to make you a better vet. So never count anything out, never put yourself in a box, and always be willing to try new things. All right, moving on. Another important thing to start doing outside of gaining animal experience and volunteering is to get involved in extracurriculars, get involved in your community, and of course try and get really good grades. That's, obvious, but when I'm talking about extracurriculars, I'm talking about things that you're interested in, things that just excite you. It does not have to be veterinary related. It can be veterinary related, and that's great. But also just if you like to play sports, if you like to dance, if you like to do marching band or play an instrument or join clubs, any way that you can get involved in your community and, show your volunteerism, show your work ethic, and also do things that you love that make you a more well-rounded person, that's going to, in the end, not only make you a better person, not only give you life experiences and help you gain those skills that you are going to need, kind of those soft skills that you're going to need in your veterinary career, but they're really just gonna make you well-rounded, give you those life experiences. I'll give you an example. In high school, I was in marching band, and I was very involved in like all county marching band leadership. I was section leader. That was what I loved. I loved playing music. I loved everything about like band and orchestra and all of that. So I did a ton of that. I also volunteered at daycares and hospitals. Like I said, back then I didn't even know I wanted to be a vet, so I didn't have a lot of animal experience, but I took art classes. I just explored my interests, and that's not only important for your vet career, but for your personal growth, because everything you gain from those experiences are ultimately going to make you who you are. They're going to help you gain communication skills, life experience, meet people, make connections. So that's really important too. So don't put yourself in a box. Diversify yourself, do those extracurriculars that you're good at and you want to do and that you enjoy, because your well-being is also important, which I can touch on later as well. But that's something to always kind of keep in mind, and that if you are going to go down this career path, you need to have outlets, and you need to have things that you do that you enjoy outside of veterinary medicine in order to stay in a good mental state and support your well-being. So the last thing I'm gonna say about the high school time period is prepare yourself for rejection. Not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but if you are going to go into this industry, you have to be very persistent. You have to kind of have a thick skin, and things aren't always just gonna happen right away. So you might get your first job or first volunteer experience working in, a vet clinic, and you think you're going to learn how to draw blood and do all this cool stuff, and then you're in the kennel, cleaning kennels and walking dogs, and that's very common. And so don't get discouraged, don't get down on yourself. Those skills that you're going to learn doing animal husbandry, while it's not always glamorous, you're going to take a lot away from those skills. You need those skills to become a veterinarian, because you need to know about basic animal husbandry, and you can actually learn a lot just by working at a kennel, for instance, because you're going to learn about animal behavior. You're going to learn about animal interactions with each other. You're going to be able to probably start helping give medications, and learn about how to provide enrichment for animals. And all of these things are so important as a vet, because if you're going to private practice, these are things you're going to be talking to owners about. And it's just important to know in general. So don't discount any experience just because it's not exactly what you think you're going to be doing off the bat. Trust me, we've all been there, and we're all better for it in the end. And every great veterinarian had to start somewhere. So just remember that, and don't take it personal. Just try to see what you can gain from each experience. And that being said, a lot of vet clinics don't have insurance policies that cover volunteers. So if you find it difficult to find a volunteer experience, don't get discouraged. I definitely had a really hard time getting into vet clinics, because when you have no experience, it's just hard. It's hard to just get in there. But I recommend starting in the kennels or starting at an animal shelter. They always need volunteers, or anywhere where you can get some hands-on animal experience, because even when you're not doing the veterinary things, you are still gaining very valuable experience, and it's going to help you kind of rise up that ladder to get to where you want to be. So let's move on to the college sector of this. So this is where I decided I wanted to be a vet. And if you are in college, I actually changed my major the first year after college. So you can change your major, you can make it happen. You might just have to work a little harder. Sorry about the interruption, guys. I am having a data issue on my phone, and I keep running out of data, so I had to delete an app so I could film this video. So here we go. I think we were talking about the college portion of what you need to do. to prepare for vet school. So if you're like me and you decide you want to go to vet school while you're in college, that's totally okay. I changed my major like a year into it, so it's totally doable. You might just have to do a little extra work to catch up, and that's totally fine. And so when you pick a major for vet school, most schools do not have a pre-vet major, and the reason for that, it's actually smart. It is to help you, because if you are pre-vet and then you don't end up going to vet school for whatever reason, of course we all think we want to go to vet school and we're gonna go to vet school and we're definitely going to vet school, but if for whatever reason you don't end up going, it is pretty hard to find a job with the pre-vet major. So if you're going to pay 4 years for your tuition, you want a definite major that's a solid major that can get you a job, even if you don't go to vet school. So I would recommend picking a major that you are just passionate about and you think you will be good at and excel at, and is something that you really want to do and is a field that you would want to work in should you not go to vet school. So you don't have to have a specific major to go to vet school. A lot of people do animal science. That is what I did. It's very large animal focused. It is very beneficial. You are oftentimes like going and doing things sort of in the vet school or where the teaching units are, with like the swine units and the beef units and the dairy units and things like that. So it is kind of cool to like kind of get your foot in the door. And of course you get a lot of hands-on animal experience, albeit a lot of it is large animal, but if, like I said, it'll help you to become a more well-rounded person. So I really liked that major, but really any major is fine. It's really a matter of what area would you want to work in should you not get into vet school, and what are you good at, what are you interested in, what are you going to excel at, because what's gonna more so be important is your GPA and how you did in your major. So pick something that you're good at. Another thing I would recommend doing starting in college would be looking at the veterinary schools you're interested in, or just looking at all the schools in general. So you can actually just Google them, go on their websites, and get a feel for the school, see what their programs have to offer, and most importantly, look at their requirements, because the requirements do vary from school to school. So if you have a specific school that you want to go to, you need to build your college curriculum around that school. And this is very important because a lot of people will get to the end of their college experience and start applying through VMCAS, and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't take this class that the school wanted, because different classes are required by different schools. And or they'll be like, I didn't get this number of hours or this or that or what have you. So look at that school, look at the schools you're interested in, and build your curriculum and your college schedule around that. So that is totally key, because even by the time I got to applying, some schools I was thinking about that were like down south that I would consider going to, I couldn't even apply to them because I didn't have all the classes, and they wanted like a specific biology class or something that I just didn't take. And if you do apply and you don't have all the requirements, they will just eliminate you right off the bat. It's a waste of your money. It's a waste of everyone's time. So don't do that. It's a waste of money. And the VMCAS application is very expensive, which I will get to. But anyways, just plan your college schedule around the classes that the different colleges require. So I would suggest picking, I think a really good ideal number is like 5 to 6 schools. Because it's not too many, it's not too little, and that's a good number of schools to be thinking about that you would consider going to, and it's doable in terms of applying to them, which we will get to. So the next thing I would recommend is to create a course schedule, as I mentioned. So what I mean by this is look at all the credits and classes you need for your major. And then, like we talked about, go on the websites for the schools of veterinary medicine that you want to go to and look at all the requirements for those schools. And then you're going to merge all of those classes into one giant list of classes you need to take, and then you need to go semester by semester and see when your school offers each of those classes and build a class schedule. So this can be daunting and overwhelming and frustrating because not every class is offered every semester. Some classes aren't offered over the summer, for instance. So that's why it's really important to look at what time of year they're offered, because if you plan out your whole schedule and then the class isn't offered at that time, you have to go back and change everything around. But trust me, this is worth spending like a day on, and just building that backbone structure framework that is going to be your college plan. So it's not going to be perfect. You're probably going to have to change things around. Another thing I would recommend thinking about while you're doing this is your course load and your personal ability, and how you're going to perform best. So like for me, I wasn't someone who could take 18 credits a semester and take a bunch of crazy difficult classes all at once, and all of that. So I believe I took one extra semester in undergrad, and I just took my time, and I took like one really hard class over the summers, and then during the fall and spring I would take one or two really difficult classes like orgo and physics, or orgo and calculus, or orgo and what have you. You know, you get the gist. So take like one or two of those, and then I would take like a couple of fun animal science or writing classes or whatever other requirements I needed. So for me, I couldn't take more than like two really difficult classes at once because I wanted to do my best. And that's something you think about, which I was going to touch on later, but I'll just mention it now. The average GPA of most people who get accepted to vet school is around 3.5. Which isn't crazy, but you have to think about that because you want to perform well in these classes. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to get these prereqs out of the way. You want to do well in them. So just think about how you can plan your schedule so that you're going to set yourself up for success. So for me, it was taking one or two really difficult classes and pairing that with one or two or three simpler, easier, more fun, less time consuming classes. And that set me up for success. So do whatever feels right for you, and then just build your whole schedule for college. And yeah, that is a really good strategy in order to get all of your requirements and everything you need. That is going to set you up for success. So lastly, while you are in college, you're going to want to take the GRE in order to get into vet school. It is a kind of a lengthy process, I think. There's like a lag time in between registering, taking, getting your grades, and having them sent off. So I think most people start taking it about when they start getting ready to apply for vet school, which for a lot of people is just 1 year before you graduate undergrad. So you can take that route, or you can take the route of taking a few years off in between and focusing on your application and gaining other life experiences, and what have you. So whatever you're more comfortable with is what you should do. Don't, get overwhelmed by everyone around you that is doing it a certain way. A lot of my friends and people I know are like on the go, like they have to take the fast track and get there as fast as possible, and that's great. And I admire them. But me, I like to take the more scenic route. I find that I just get more out of the experience when I do that, and I enjoy it more. And it's just better for me. And I learned to become okay with that. And that is like, I'm just gonna stop and mention, if you're going to become a vet, that is a skill that I would recommend like really thinking about and honing in on, is just being okay with who you are, and not trying to compare yourself to other people, and not trying to like make unrealistic expectations for yourself. This is a very long journey, and everyone who goes down this road has to do it at their own pace and their own way and do what works with them. Everyone has a different study method. Everyone has a different job application method, or a different way of learning, or a different way that they integrate their life experiences into their skill set or into who they are. So just keep that in mind, The way you learn, the way you want to do things is okay, and be okay with that, because this is your journey. No one else can tell you how you learn best and how you're going to be successful. Only you have that answer. So learn to just be okay with that, honestly, because you are who you are, and that's what makes you unique, and that's what is going to help you to build your skill set and to become the person who you are. So that is perfectly fine. But that leads me into a discussion about the application process, which can be a little confusing, a little overwhelming. It's a little bit different than anything most people have ever done. So you're going to be going through a centralized application system called the VMCAS, or the VetMed College Application Service. And so that whole process takes about, like I mentioned, about a whole year. So you start applying in the summer, and then you submit your application in early fall, and then they process it and let you know later on, like towards December, about interviews. Then you're gonna interview in like January or February and get your acceptance probably around March and make your decision by April. So the whole thing takes about a year. So just keep that in mind. Like I mentioned, do you want to start applying your junior year of college, or do you want to take a year off or a couple of years off and apply while you have that time off in between? Either way is fine. Just keep in mind it's a lengthy process. So when you're about to start applying, like I mentioned, make sure you know the requirements for each school. Don't apply to schools that you don't have the prerequisites for, because it's very expensive, waste of time and money. I can't emphasize that enough. Think about your GPA. Like I mentioned, most people have a 3.5 going in. You can also look at a lot of the schools will have on their website a link to the average class GPAs of the previous entering classes. So that can be helpful too. Some schools have a little bit higher GPAs and what have you. So just keep that in mind. But overall, you're going for at least a 3.5. If you do better, then that's even better. GRE scores, I think the GRE is still required for most schools. And so I'm just going to briefly mention what I did. I just got one of the Kaplan books and like a comprehensive review book, and I just did a little bit every day for like 6 months to a year, and just marked the areas that I didn't do well on and went back and brushed up on those areas and did practice questions. So you can buy course packages, you can get the Kaplan book, whatever works for you. You just have to make time for it, which can be difficult if you're taking a course load. But just make the time for it, just buckle down and do it. And that's all I can really tell you about that. You're going to need letters of recommendation. Usually you need at least 3 letters of recommendation. And ideally you would want 2 of them to be from veterinarians you've worked with, and 1 of them from a professor. Now you can have more. I had, I believe, 4, or you can have less. I wouldn't recommend having less than 3. And you can also have letters of recommendation from other people you've worked with, other people who know what skills you have and just can vouch for who you are as a person and your skill set and why you would make a great veterinarian. So just keep that in mind. I can't emphasize this enough. When you're asking for letters of recommendation, make sure that it's from people that will write you a really good recommendation, that know who you are, that can really vouch for your character. And another thing is, when you're asking someone for a letter of recommendation, don't be afraid to say, would you be comfortable writing me a good letter of recommendation? And I say this because you can ask someone just for a letter of recommendation, and they might not necessarily write you a good letter. They might say, oh yeah, I can write you a letter, and it might not be good. Honestly, it's happened to people. So I would recommend making a point of saying, would you be comfortable with writing me a good quality letter of recommendation. Do you feel comfortable with that? And really talk to them about it. If they don't, then that's not someone you want writing you a letter, because you want someone that can convince the admissions team that you have this skill set required to go to vet school, and that you're a hard worker, and that you have all these great qualities. And if it's not someone who really knows you like that, then you don't want them writing you a letter. So I would recommend really taking the time to think about who knows you, who could give like specifics about your character and your work ethic that would really persuade the admissions team to let you in. And this is something to start thinking about even before you start working or volunteering or any of that. Just always have it in the back of your mind, like, who am I going to ask for a letter? Because this is a huge deal. This is one of those components of the application process that can make or break your application. If you have really amazing letters, and you know, maybe you don't have the most amazing grades or the most amazing GPA, the admissions team, you know, will still look at these things. So you want to, you know, you really, really, really want to get people that know you and will write you a great letter. So that's my little soapbox on that. But yeah, and then of course, ask them ahead of time, give them a heads up, give them like 3 or 4 months or more, because like I said, it's time consuming, and if you want it to be good, you need to give them time. And once they write the letter, send them a thank you note, because it's very unprofessional to not send a thank you note for something like that. And it just really shows that you appreciated the time that they put in to write you a whole letter, which is a big deal. So show them some appreciation. So moving on. Another thing you're going to need to apply to vet school is 2,000 to 5,000 hours of animal contact experience. So what is animal contact experience? So it can be anything from volunteering, like in a kennel, to actually doing veterinary things like working as a tech, working as an assistant, working on a farm, basically anything where you are working directly with animals. So most schools kind of vary in the number of hours that they want. I would say there's a baseline minimum of 2,000 hours, and that's a lot of hours. So like I said, the earlier you can start getting these in, the better. Because that's just going to compile and compile and compile and work in your favor. But look at the school's requirements that you want to go to and see how many hours they require and what kind of experiences they like. And while I'm on that topic, I should probably just mention that while you're looking for schools that you like, look for schools that have programs that you're interested in, which might seem obvious, but some schools are known for different things. And so like if you're really interested in shelter medicine, UF has Maddie's Shelter Medicine program, which is a unique program built for shelter medicine students. And so that was a big reason why I wanted to go here as well, is because they had that program and I want to do shelter med. So just think about what your interests are and look on the school's website and see what kind of cool things they really emphasize, and try and kind of merge those as well. Lastly, for the application process, there is going to be an interview at the end. If you make it, you know, past through the VMCAS and all of that, and they extend you an invitation to interview. That is the last step of the process. So for the interview, I would recommend the biggest thing you can do, so you can look at their website, like I mentioned, and see what the school is all about, what their focuses are. Would you fit in well at that school? Because, you know, that's just something you should know. Like, is that a school for you? Would you fit in there? Why do you want to go there? So just think about those things, because if you can't answer those questions, then you might want to reassess, like, why do I want to go there? And that's important to go into your interview knowing, so that you know why you want to go to their school. Right? It makes sense. So Different schools have different types of interviews. A lot of time it will say on their website whether it's going to be multiple mini interviews or just a standard conversational interview or a behavioral interview. And so this is so you can know how to prepare for your interview, which I highly recommend doing. And one of the best ways to prepare for your interview, honestly, no matter what kind of interview it's going to be, is to just compile a list of your life experiences and stories and things that like you learned from, like learning experiences, and just be thinking about those, thinking of the way that you want that story to come across and what your point is and what it taught you, what you took away from these different situations, how they helped you grow as a person, things like that, because that's going to give you this huge base of things that you can talk about that no matter how they run the interview, you can draw on those experiences. And I found myself doing that at no matter what school I interviewed at. If I had like one, really good story from my life that it was a meaningful story and I had gained valuable experience from it and it was a learning experience, I found that I could draw on that to answer a lot of different interview questions. So I would recommend taking the time to like sit down and reflect on all of your experiences and coming up with a list of valuable experiences you had and how you could share those experiences in your interview to not only help them to get to know you better, but to show what you've learned so far on your journey to vet school. So that is the biggest thing that I would recommend doing. Another thing you can do to prepare for your interview is to know what's going on in the current events in the veterinary industry and know your stance on veterinary related topics. Because some schools will most likely ask you about these things. And of course, if you're going into this interview, in this industry, you should know these things, right? Like you should know where you stand on controversial veterinary issues, and you should know how current events are impacting our industry because our industry is constantly changing. You have to stay up with the knowledge, you have to stay current. And so that's just going to show that you really care about our industry and you're knowledgeable about the industry you're going into. So a little bit more about the application process. Like I mentioned, I would recommend applying to at least 5 or 6 schools. If you can do more, that's great. It can be very, very, very costly. You have to pay a fee for VMCAS, and then you have to pay separate fees for the schools. So it can add up really quickly. And then going to all of the interviews too, that's something you have to think about. Like, can you actually go to all of these interviews, especially if they're far away? I would recommend baseline at least 3 schools, because if you only apply to 1 or 2 and you don't get in and you have to wait a whole year and reapply and all of that. So the more schools you apply to, the more you increase your chances of getting in. And another thing I would recommend doing is looking on the school's website and seeing how many out-of-state applicants they accept, because some schools accept more than others. And if it's a school that only accepts like 5 or 10 out-of-state students, that is going to be very, very difficult for you to get into that school. It's just facts. Like it just is. So the schools that I applied to out of state, I made sure that they accepted like half of their class from out of state. Because I didn't feel that it would be even worth it to really go through the application process and do all of that. If they only accept like 5 out-of-state students, that was just my personal feeling. But if it's totally up to you, but that is like a little pro tip. So think about the cost, and then when you're looking at schools, something else to think about is just the location. Like, what location do you want to be in? Do you need to be near family and friends? Do you need to be in a certain location for a certain reason? There aren't that many accredited veterinary schools in the United States. There's about 30. So it's not very many at all. So you really need to think about, sorry about my dogs, Loki, you really need to think about what location do you want to be in, because you're going to be there for 4 years. You want to enjoy yourself go to the school, tour the school, see what they have to offer, see what the campus is like. Like I said, you're going to be spending a lot of time there, so you want to be happy there. So think about that. That is important. Think about the curriculum structure. So not every vet school is structured the same way in terms of the curriculum. Some do more experiential based learning where you're on clinics more. Some do it a different way, like UF, you start your clinics actually earlier on. You do a semester of clinics and then you finish out with a semester of clinics with like a year of classroom work in between, which is different than most schools. So just take a peek at that. My friend went to Mississippi, and I think the first 2 years you're in the classroom and the second 2 years you're on clinics. So it can be really, really different depending on what school you go to. So think about how you learn, think about what you would like, because you are paying for this. This is your education, and it's a lot of money, which we can make another video about that too. You know, the debt to income ratio and the decision of should I actually go to vet school and all of that is a whole other topic, but it's really something to think about. It's a lot of money. And if you're going to be going there, you want to make sure it's the education that you're looking for. So that being said, just take a peek at their curriculum and see what you like and the special programs. Like I mentioned, cost is another thing to think about. Like I mentioned, the tuition is very expensive and the application process is very expensive. So that being said, look at the costs for the different schools. Some schools cost more than others. Generally speaking, if you go in-state, you're going to be paying about half of the price that you would pay as an out-of-state student. And so that is something huge to think about, because even in-state, paying in-state tuition is still a lot of money. So if you go out-of-state, it's going to be double that. So think about that. And then also the private schools, like Cornell is a private school, I believe. They are going to be a lot more costly than your public schools. So going in-state public is going to be the least expensive route. If you go out of state to a private school, that's going to be the most expensive route. And I would recommend just looking at the pricing structure, because you don't want to apply to a bunch of schools only to realize that like it's insanely expensive and you actually don't want to go if it's going to be that expensive and you're going to be that much in debt your whole life, you know. So you have to think about that. So just think about it. Of course, money isn't everything, and of course we go into this industry because we love animals and all of that, but it does put a strain on you eventually, and the debt to income ratio for veterinarians is not great. So keep that in mind. Be smart, make smart financial decisions, and do what you're comfortable with. So I already mentioned about the whole VMCAS application and how it works. One more thing I would like to mention about that is that on top of filling out the VMCAS, you are going to have supplemental applications for certain schools. Certain schools require that. So again, look on their website, make sure you know ahead of time if that's something you should be expecting. Those do cost extra. It's usually not a huge fee. It's usually like $30 to $60 to $100, but it still can add up. And that's another application that you have to do on top of VMCAS. And a lot of times they want a whole other essay or a whole, you know, other thing, like uploading your resume or answer questions, or like it's different for every school. So look on their website so you can just mentally prepare for that, because it is another thing you're going to have to do on top of everything else. So be aware of that. Also, I would recommend just be patient, stay busy, and continue to build your resume while you're in that lag time of applying through VMCAS of that year, because all of the experiences you continue to build, you can talk about those in your interview. They're going to make you a more well-rounded person, and they're going to help you prepare better for vet school. I will share, like for me, everything didn't go as I originally planned. I think I first originally applied in like 2014, and I didn't get in right away, and that's another thing to be prepared for. I feel like I could almost make a whole other video on that. But it's very common that, of course, we're not all going to get in right away if each school only accepts 100 students and there's only 30 vet schools, right? And that's okay. That is, honestly, it's okay. If you really want to go to vet school, figure out how you can make your application better. A lot of times you can review your application with someone at that school and they can tell you how can you improve your application. If your GPA is low, you might need to go get a master's degree, which I did, not because my GPA needed it, but because I had time off. I had like a year off and I wanted to further my education. So I went and got a master's degree, but a lot of people will go ahead and do that. If your grades are a component that you're needing to work on, you can really boost your GPA by doing that. And a lot of schools have online or in person, like really cool veterinary master's degrees and like forensics and shelter med and stuff like that. So that's just a way that you can better yourself, continue to learn and grow and build your skill set in this industry. That's going to make you a better vet. So a lot of people will do that. You might need more experience. So search out more experience, try to grow in that area. For me, I personally took my time off that I had in between of like reapplying to VMCAS, and I just like worked at a vet clinic full-time for a few years, and then I took the opportunity to kind of try out different things that I hadn't done or wouldn't normally do, which I highly recommend. Even if it's not veterinary related, like I mentioned, all of these things will benefit you and give you valuable skills that you will use as a vet. And they will help you kind of like learn if the vet industry is really for you. Like there were a few times when I questioned, is the vet industry for me? Like I was kind of compassion fatigued, and yeah, I wasn't planning on sharing this, but it's true, and it happens in our industry. Sometimes that's kind of not what you expect, and you get a little compassion fatigued, or you get, tired of the crazy application cycles and working yourself to the bone and taking all these classes and volunteering and doing the most. And sometimes you just need like a little mental break, or you need to step away for a second. And that's what I had to do. So I went and I was a substitute teacher for a couple years, and over that time, I really enjoyed teaching. I learned a lot of valuable skills from it, but it made me realize like my heart is in the vet industry. I want to be a vet. I can't live without working with animals. Like it doesn't feel right. It's what I'm meant to do. And then I was like, I'm gonna go back and apply to vet school again. I'm going to go to the school that I want to go to. That's another thing. I turned down other schools that let me in because I really wanted to go to UF, and this is my dream. This is my home. I love it here in Florida, and I didn't want to go to any other school. And so I was picky about that, and I just kept on until I got into UF. So it's all about what's important to you. You have to do it your own way. But like I said, if you have to step away from the industry, or if you have a few years off, do those different things. That was also the time for me where I started working at the wildlife rehabilitation facility, and I realized that I love working with wildlife, which I would have never done if I just, didn't have that time to go do that. So every experience you gain is going to be valuable. Every chance you have to go do something like that, do it, because it's going to make you better. So that all being said, yeah, that is pretty much the gist of it. Like I said, I'll link down below my blog post about everything you need to know about applying. It'll have most of what I talked about today, and then even more details. Just a final word would be that if this is what you really want, even if you don't have the best grades, even if you don't have the experience, even if you have no veterinary experience, or you get discouraged because you're not getting accepted or anything like that, just take some time to refocus and realize and think about how you're going to be a vet someday and how you're going to help all these animals and what made you want to get into the vet industry in the first place. Why do you love working with animals? And just think about, picture yourself being a vet and that end goal and how good it's gonna feel and how many animals you're gonna help. Because if you know that this is what you're meant to do and you're meant to be in this industry, don't get discouraged, no matter if you have to reapply or if you get rejected or if you get heartbroken or if you get compassion fatigued. Take that time, focus on your mental well-being, learn those skills to take care of yourself and do what you need to do to be happy and be the best veterinarian and animal caretaker that you can be, and never stop. Never stop trying. If you want to do this career, you can do it. It is totally up to you. It's about persistence, it's about hard work, and it's about being passionate about helping animals. And that being said, I'm gonna leave that there. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. I hope this video helps people. This is everything I've learned from my last decade of applying to vet school and going to vet school. Let me know what other videos you guys want to see. I have some ideas rolling around. I was thinking about doing like a what's in my vet school bag, some videos on bottle feeding kittens and like guinea pig husbandry. I don't know, let me know. What do you guys want to know more about? What it's like, a typical day in vet school, whatever you guys want to know more about, let me know down in the comments below. And if you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. You guys are gonna do great. And don't forget, the animals appreciate everything you do. All right, have a good day, guys. Thanks for watching.